There was a time when a chosen few, like Aristotle and Hippocrates, were assigned by the grace of God to be physicians and healers among the children of men. Many were not only physicians, but also mathematicians, astronomers, chemists, and poets. Their healing powers spanned far beyond those of today's doctors. It was as if their minds and bodies were infused with a stream of cosmic wisdom. Today, physicians are no longer chosen. Wisdom is no longer a free gift.
Today's doctors become doctors because they go to school, memorize diseases, and learn how to do surgery and give medications. Passing tests and earning diplomas don't necessarily make you a healer. They make you a licensed surgeon and a legal drug prescriber. Doctors tell you what they see. They see an infection. They see a genetic disease. They see a heart attack. But what they don't see is the underlying cause of these diseases. They don't see what's behind the curtain. They just see the effects. In other words, they see the puppets, but not the strings and the forces that move the puppets. Naturally, all they can do is to treat, not the forces that move the strings, but the puppets. About all they can do is to fix broken bones, control the pain, and treat and prevent infections.
Dr. Carol Clifton is a psychologist and an author in Clackamas, Oregon. She says when it comes to disease, we need to pay attention to the cause, not the symptoms.
Let me ask you this. You're saying that medicine treats symptoms,
Right.
but does not cure.
It doesn't necessarily treat the cause, it treats the symptom.
So what treats the cause?
Your body has an innate ability to heal itself. If you cut your leg, your body knows how to heal it, whether or not you have a Band-Aid, whether or not you have a cure comb, it knows how to heal it without the medication. Sometimes you can take medication that will actually help with your symptoms, but it doesn't really correct the cause of the problem in the first place.
So is it good to take medications or not good to take medications?
Sometimes it's absolutely necessary to take a medication, and I would never suggest that somebody not take a medication that's recommended, but it's also a good idea to do the research to find out what might be the underlying cause.
So wait a minute, who does the research?
Well,
The person.
in my case, yeah, the person.
So what happens with all the treatments? So we are treating people.
Right.
Are we treating the disease, or are we treating the root cause, or are we treating the symptoms?
We rarely, or barely probably, treat the root cause. We always are trying to alleviate suffering by alleviating the symptoms. That is what we are trying to do.
Ancient healers did not receive a diploma. They were special servants who were chosen from among people, and even then they had to earn the rite of passage. This rite of passage often required decades of selfless service under the mentorship of an enlightened master. They had to live, eat, and sleep by the patient's bedside. They had to clean their bedpans and become their companions.
Sometimes when you walk in, I think you feel a certain calmness and a connection to your physician, and that's always nice. Even that alone, I think, is really therapeutic, just to feel like someone's listening to you and you're being understood as a person that's just got multiple dimensions to them, and I'm not just a cough or a temperature walking through the door.
There were no laboratories. Instead, they had to do strange things like using leeches or tasting the patient's teardrops and fresh urine.
Dr. Edna Ma is an anesthesiologist. She's also an author and an entrepreneur. She believes that today's medicine can actually benefit from some of these ancient practices.
So I want to kind of address the Chinese medicine aspect of it. And it's not because I'm Chinese, but I do have some experience with this because I am Chinese and my parents are from China, and I had a lot of exposure with receiving Chinese medicine. Let me just give you an example, and I think it will kind of summarize it. One of the practices that Chinese women, the Chinese have for postpartum women, is taking pig's feet and boiling the heck out of it for several hours until the bone marrow is leached out of those pig's feet. And then the postpartum woman who's just had a baby and lost a bunch of blood and who has to feed this baby with breast milk now, is drinking this pig's feet soup. And you're supposed to do this for the whole month. It's called doing the month. And when you went back to look at, this is Chinese medicine. If you actually look at the women's breast milk and look at the concentration of free calcium inside it, it actually has a very high amount of that, and you're drinking it, ingesting it. I just think that the lens of Western medicine hasn't been scrutinizing Eastern medicine in the same context, and so they think of it as maybe placebo effect, although there might be a benefit, but we just haven't given that same lens or scrutiny.
Over time, unlike today's doctors, they learned to develop some degree of clairvoyant insight. They could see the devils that caused illness. They knew that sometimes they had to do something to push the devils out, to realign the connection between the body and mind. The key was to restore the inner harmony that was lost. That's how they came up with a cure. And don't make a mistake, they were very good at it. Many of these people never even made it as a healer. They ended up spending an entire lifetime serving as an apprentice. Some had to take the dream of being a healer to the grave, because that honor was never conferred by the master.
This is all great. But what she really wanted to understand was why people get sick. Unfortunately, Daddy got up. He had to go. He grabbed her hand, they thanked the man, and walked away. Maddy couldn't take her eyes off the man. She promised to come back as they disappeared around the corner. For the next few weeks, Daddy couldn't take Maddy to work. He had to work the night shift. Maddy needed her beauty sleep. When he started back on days again, she kept asking if she could come along. Eventually, she did. And the next time she saw the stranger, she was quick to bring up that same exact question. Why do people get sick? The stranger's response was so far out of touch with today's reality, it seemed like a tale from the Dark Ages. Of course, Maddy's dad was a busy doctor and didn't have time for hocus pocus. But he still felt like, just for Maddy's sake, he needed to stay quiet and just let her listen.
Illness is the primary way your soul can grow. Yes. It's a way of educating yourself and absorbing wisdom. Yes. It gives you the opportunity to cleanse your mind and body of all your wrongdoings and impurities.
I think sickness has a number of dimensions to it. Sometimes we get sick and it's a biochemical issue. You know, we're putting toxins in our body. We're eating things we shouldn't eat. We're drinking too much alcohol. We're killing brain cells. We're exposed to radiation. You know, those things are for real. People in Nagasaki and Hiroshima got radiation sickness and died. Sometimes we're sick because we're not getting enough of something. So I believe we get sick on the biochemical level of too much of something or not enough of something. Some people don't drink enough water. Some people aren't getting all the vitamins, nutrients, and minerals they want because our vegetables are denatured because of the just over farming and so forth. I think sometimes we get sick because our spirit is saying, you need to slow down and look at something. There's something going on that you're not paying attention to. And so it kind of slams us into facing it.
You say pain is a messenger?
Right.
What does that mean?
That means that if you're having some kind of pain, whether it's physical pain, psychological pain, then that means there's something that you need to attend to. That's a message from your body that says, pay attention.
Every time I have been sick or broken a bone, which has happened several times, lying in bed, I will go into meditation, or I'll have a friend of mine who's a healer, or someone's a psychic or a spiritual teacher, and they'll help me see the underlying message that I've not been paying attention to. And so it's a way of getting my attention. And whether it's an accident you have, or whether it's a disease you take on, or whether it's something you've been holding on to that you're not expressing and releasing from, it can be a past life as well as in a current life.
So, in other words, getting sick could be a godsend.
Absolutely. Look, I believe in what Napoleon Hill said. He said every negative event has within it the seed of an equal or greater benefit. So illness and accidents are ways of our body or spirit telling us through our body that something's off course and that we need to course correct.
Most people, though, never really think this way. They come down with something and think it was stress, bad luck, or maybe even bad genes. They want to get better so they can continue to do the same creepy things and make the same hurtful mistakes.
It's important to really develop a relationship with yourself. There's an innate wisdom that is put within each of us if we are only just willing to tap into that.
Now here's where things start to get really strange.
Well, deep underneath the surface of the planet Mercury, a highly advanced civilization is thriving. To them, disease is a calling, a form of higher education. They almost never get sick. But in rare occasions when they do, they see disease as an opportunity to grow, reconnect, and attain higher wisdom. Yes, to them, an illness is like a fruit. The fleshly part is as sweet as nectar, but on the outside, the skin is extremely bitter and angry. It has thorns that are toxic to the physical body. The meat of the fruit contains the higher wisdom, but to reach it, you need to get past the sting of the disease. You need to get past the bitter skin and the toxic thorns. You see, feeling the shock of the bitter taste and the toxic thorns is the price they pay to reach the kernel of wisdom. The heftier the price, the higher the level of growth and wisdom. When they get sick, they understand that it was the result of an underlying imbalance. An imbalance that was caused not by chance, oh no, but by their own impurities and wrongdoings. You see, they must pay for their mistakes in order to regain their balance. They understand that the coming of this illness is pregnant with an important life lesson that will eventually enrich their lives. That's why when they get sick, the elders and family members gather together to find the underlying cause of the illness and celebrate the coming of wisdom. You know, Maddy, that wisdom is power. Yes. Law and order balance the universe, you know. Here on Earth, most people feel the sting of the thorns and the bitter taste of an illness and want to have nothing to do with it. They want to get rid of it. They even take toxic drugs to treat their bodies before getting a chance to reap the wisdom that was meant to come from it.
Maddy was confused. How could there be wisdom behind a dreaded illness? People die from ailments. So where's the wisdom when someone dies, she asked. My best friend died because she was sick. How do you find wisdom in that? How can she learn anything when she's already dead?
There is wisdom in that for both the child and the immediate family. but you'll have to wait to learn about it when the time is right. For now, you need to learn about the underlying forces that keep a human being alive. Forces that cause health and disease.
After this exchange, the stranger fell into silence. Maddy and her father knew it was time to go. For the first time in her young, tender life, Maddy's curiosity was being quenched, even if only for a moment. She couldn't believe he didn't have a name, and so decided to name him after the planet he had mentioned. She decided to call him the Mercury Man. For the next 2 weeks, the Mercury Man was nowhere to be found. Maddy was so bummed until one day, on the way back home from Dad's work, she spotted him from far away. As Daddy reluctantly parked the car, she jumped out and breathlessly rushed toward the man. When she got there, she sat immediately in front of him and started asking away. "So tell me about the forces," Maddy asked impatiently. "You know, the forces that are responsible for health and disease. Remember?" The stranger was unmoved by the encounter and acted as if Maddy and her father did not even exist. Minutes passed without any exchange. To Maddy, it felt like an eternity. Things started to get really uncomfortable. But as Maddy's father tried to pull her away, the man started speaking.
Nature is filled with invisible forces like gravity and electromagnetic fields. Many of these forces exert a profound influence on the human body. These forces deeply affect us, Maddy.
Nancy Trivilato is a lecturer, author, and scientific researcher in the field of consciousness. She believes that these forces exert a profound influence on the human body.
There has been a number of research being done to see what is the connection of this subtle energy field with health. Even medical doctors did very serious
energy
research.
field, you mean energy around
Energy
you?
around of us.
Okay.
So whatever people would call it, but it seems that this energy field, even though it's here all the time, most of the time, and most of us, we don't sense it.
Before you learn about these forces, Maddy, you need to understand what we, you and I, are made of. We are not what we appear to be, Maddy. We look like we're made up of meat, skin, and bones. But there is a lot more to a human being. There is a lot that you don't ordinarily get to see.
Human beings are not limited. We are not just limited, by this body. We have this consciousness.
Number one, hey, I exist beyond my body. Number two, there is an energy field that connects me here, but not only connects myself as consciousness to my body, but also I have a relation, I interchange these energies with the environment and people around of me.
We are not merely human beings with a spirit, but actually we are spiritual beings with a human body.
On Earth, humans are clothed with at least 4 different bodies. 4 different bodies blended into one. Your physical appearance with the meat, skin, and bones is just one of these bodies. Once you understand what our bodies are made out of, only then can you really see how nature's forces affect us.
Maddy was confused. Her dad, he thought the man is crazy. But the man continued.
The physical body is made up of cells, tissues, and organs. It's filled with blood and fluids, yes. This is what today's science and medicine primarily focus on. You see, today, all the drugs, all the tests, and all the treatments focus on this body. Doctors and scientists know very little about the other bodies, and that's why, even with all their tools and treatments, people still suffer from all sorts of diseases.
All this talk is a bit too strange, if you ask me. How bizarre. How does he know all this? Much to my surprise, as I started searching and looking for answers, I was shocked to realize that plenty of authors and coaches already shared this unorthodox view. They all say the same thing. A complete, whole human being is not just a physical body. It's a fourfold creature. Wild, isn't it? I met 2 such coaches. One was Patricia Comer. Comer is a teacher and author. The other was Weem Namu. Namu is an established author with at least 12 books under her name. She's an initiate of an American shamanic tradition and comes from an ancient lineage of Babylonian healers.
Tell me about harmony and balance.
Okay, harmony and balance occurs when you have the 4 components that make up each individual human being that we all come into this life with.
For us to be balanced and whole, there's 4 aspects of ourselves.
In order to harmonize and to find that harmony and balance, we need to bring all 4 of those components together. And once those are all together, you see, this is where the powerhouse of the individual lies. The true power, the authentic power.
Just when you think it can't get any more insane, I met 2 other authors who held the same mysterious opinion. Ines Bayer is an author with a master's degree in metaphysical sciences. she studies near-death and out-of-body experiences. Luis Minero is an author and researcher with a chemistry major. His passion? Teaching and lecturing about out-of-body experiences.
We have 4 bodies or tools with which we interact with different realities, with which we are able to experience and to live life and, have experiences in the world.
There's actually much more to us than what we see. We express ourselves in 4 different kinds of bodies. Each of the bodies relates to a different layer of existence. Without these different types of bodies, life as a human being would not be possible.
So we have 4 components, and when we cut ourselves off from our innate nature, what ends up happening is that we can get sick.
We all know that there is a connection between your emotions, your mind, and your body, but people are always getting treated for the physical aspects.
Physical aspects by getting the surgeries done, by getting the medications.
Right.
But everything's approached from the physical standpoint.
Yeah,
correct.
yeah.
People think their diet and exercise are very important. And they are right, but they don't know about the other bodies. That's why, even with the best of all diets and exercise routines, people still suffer and get sick.
We either give them medication or we do surgery. What about doing other activities or other alternatives to managing the pain?
You cannot treat everyone the same.
Because it isn't just a one-size-fits-all.
There are differences in our makeup and our physiology.
Not everyone can be healed the same.
So basically what you're saying is you need to have balance between all these aspects of your life.
Everyone's different when it comes to nutrition and what will make our body well.
When they study people that live to 100 years and beyond and live well, what they find is it isn't some magic berry that they eat. It isn't some magic drink that they drink. It isn't some magic habit that they follow.
The food that is the best for my optimal wellness might be quite different than what's best for you.
One of the things is, if we just examine, for example, some of the remarkable recoveries that exist, we say, what mechanism operate here? So nowadays we accept, for example, that an individual's state of mind, how they feel about life, having a sense of purpose can be critical. But it's not only that. And then we also understand that the way they feed their body is important. But we know it's not only that.
So you're saying the physical health is not all about eating, dieting, and
yes,
it's not on the physical.
It's not only about that, and it's not only about the proper medicine we get and all of this.
It's not about medicine, diet.
Oh, think of a tree, Maddy. The tree absorbs the food in the soil and combines it with air, water, and sunlight to grow and make flowers and fruits. We are very much like trees, Maddy. Oh, our physical bodies are made out of the stuff that come from the rays of the sun, the air, and the things we eat and drink. We absorb the rays of the sun, inhale the air in the atmosphere, drink water, and use the food in the plants to grow and nourish our bodies. Just like trees. We have both visible and invisible forces that affect our health and growth. But a major difference is that, unlike trees, we also generate forces that work from the inside out. Yes. Forces like thoughts, virtues, feelings, desires, fears, and hopes. These forces constantly work to shift and shape the physical body. Right now, we have very little control over these forces. But someday in the far future, we'll be able to use them to mold and reshape our bodies as we please. That's when the curse of disease will forever disappear. Now, go, Maddy. Let me be. Your father needs you.
For the next few weeks, the Mercury man was nowhere to be found. It was as if he had disappeared into thin air. Maddy thought she would never see him again. She had almost completely lost hope. Until one day, a friend spotted him in town again. Maddy forced her dad to take her back to see the Mercury man. And surprisingly enough, when they arrived, he was quick to pick up where he had left off.
Yes. Tell me, Maddy, what is it that keeps you alive? Think about it. What makes you breathe in and out? Do you actually have to think about the steps? Do you know what happens to your food after you eat it? What is it that makes your heart beat? Do you do all these things yourself? Science believes that over the course of time, all this intelligence just gradually evolved on its own. But nothing really happens accidentally, Maddy. No. There is true wisdom in all these activities. This wisdom didn't just unfold on its own by accident. Over time, it was delicately guided and infused into our bodies. You see, the powers that guided this wisdom were the same powers that took part in shaping nature. To the ancients, these powers were known as the life force. This life force created a germ, a kernel, that would shape and run the inner organs and machinery of the physical body. To the ancients, this kernel was known as the vital body. Some call it a life body or energy body. On Mercury, the kernel of this life force has a different name. It is called an avatar. Think of it as a holographic clone of yourself. The kind you see in a sci-fi movie. The name is not important, as long as you understand that on Earth, living organisms are animated by a life force.
Wagner Allegretti is an electrical engineer, researcher, and author near Estremoz, Portugal. He's using functional MRIs to show how just by thinking we can generate measurable forms of bioenergy.
So, okay, tell me again about the energy. I need simple words.
Energy is everywhere, inside and out of us, is what gives us life. So this energy sustains life, and in fact, it keeps a kind of connection between us and other people, and with nature also. We are always driving in and out energy as we live.
Now, a couple of 100 years ago, if you talked about these things, you would actually get burned at the stake. But now we're all free to talk about it.
Nowadays, we don't get burned. We are free to talk, but does not stop people from thinking we are just lunatics, right? And we do not know anything about,
There are hundreds of thousands of people talking about it.
We are being more and more open about this, and I think because of many different reasons. One, a lot of discussions about consciousness, what consciousness is.
So how can you, if we don't have equipment to see?
One of the things that compromise a lot this is because there are unsubstantiated information and people just create any crazy idea. And I think these two areas of science, they need to complement. We need to find a way to create a bridge in which we can acknowledge subtle energies or people's energy field with this very dense world we have.
Have you ever seen an animal die, Maddy? As soon as it dies, all the organs begin to crumble. All the tissues and cells begin to rot. The body no longer holds together because the life force is no longer there. The kernel, the germ of life is gone. Yes. This avatar has no brains. It has no emotions and does not mind hard work. In a way, it does hard labor, and does it day in and day out, from the day we are born until the time we die. You see, its job is not to think, but to make sure that the body is healthy and disease-free. It's like a computer. It does everything with unmistakable accuracy. The ultimate goal of the avatar is to build a perfectly wholesome body and to keep it nourished and healthy. Unless we've done something to disturb it, this avatar won't cut corners. If it did, our bodies would become sickly and behave self-destructively. This self-destructive tendency is what we normally see in a diseased body.
After this prologue, there was a prolonged period of silence. Maddy needed to hear more. But it seemed like the Mercury man had already ended the conversation. She couldn't leave now. It's too soon. Wait, do trees have a life force?
Yes, but in addition to the avatar, there is still another force that even trees and plants do not possess.
Emotions are associated with molecules inside the human body.
The emotions stay with you and they create the imbalances within our body because they build up, they eat you up.
There's good stress, is that what you're saying?
Yes, I don't believe that all stress is bad. There's actually something called eustress, and it's actually the stress that allows you to grow. I mean, when we're...
What's it called again?
Eustress.
And it's good.
And it's good stress.
Science thinks that the mind is the same thing as the brain, that the brain can think. But the brain does not think. It's the mind that has the power to think. When the sun rises tomorrow, I shall have more to say about this force.